All right, so for those of you that are new to an FO meeting or an FO call, welcome. We're excited to just take a step back today. If you don't know, this meeting is kind of focused on, I'll go back actually, just orienting anybody that wants to kind of to learn a little bit more about the history of the IDA and a little bit about what guides our program, what makes it unique, who we have to adhere to, what we have to adhere to, kind of the ins and outs of the IDA. We don't always do a good job of orienting new people. A lot of times we leave it up to the organization to do it, and I'm not sure that's helpful. So we want to establish a better practice of orienting people that want to know more about the IDA and answer your questions. So we're going to have a lot of times to ask questions. We want to go till 2:30 and no later, so we may not get to all the questions, but I'm going to do some sections. Derek is going to do some parts, and then we'll take your questions as well as we go, because if you have a question about it, it's likely that somebody else also has a question about it. So first, we're going to share a little bit about who Neighborhood Partnerships is. So we are a nonprofit. Most of us are in the Portland area. Our work is centered on advancing housing and economic justice in Oregon statewide. In addition to managing the IDA initiative, NP coordinates the Housing Alliance, the Oregon Housing Alliance. We organize for policy change with residents of affordable housing through a network called ROC. We convene the Stop the Debt Trap Alliance and the Oregon Economic Justice Roundtable. We also host a conference every other year coming up this fall. And some of our goals, kind of our guiding goals, are to center the voices of those most impacted, organize to grow community power for transformational change, build equitable and liberating systems, and change harmful narratives. So that's a little bit about us. Again, just trying to be really summary level. The IDA initiative itself has many layers. So we have some particular responsibilities. One of those is the first thing you see on your slide, which is receive donations to the IDA initiative. We manage $9.5 million in Oregon tax credits, which can be very complicated, but in somebody donates to the IDA initiative through NP. We then give them a tax credit, which Oregon has allowed us to do, up to 90% of what they donated to write off their Oregon state taxes. So they get a tax benefit, we get money for the program. That's how the program is generally funded. Most of our money comes from that avenue. We are then contracted to manage the IDA by the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department, which is the state entity that the IDA lives under, kind of as the umbrella. We then take the money and grant it out to 12 fiduciary organizations, or FOs. And if you're on the call today, you're most likely at one of those 12 FOs. And then some of those also manage partners. So the partners are more organizations across the state, including affordable housing agencies, culturally specific organizations, universities, and more. There are a broad variety of organizations. There's about 50 IDA providers and 12 fiduciary organizations. So total, we're about 70 or so organizations across the state. Those providers then, either FOs or network partners, enroll clients and work with them to do everything related to the IDA. That's a little bit of our flow chart. So particularly for NP, we manage a variety of specific responsibilities. We are both the funder and the entity that provides support for the FO. So it's a little bit of a dual role. Our goal is to lead with values around collaboration, transparency, and racial equity. And we're responsible for convening partners, facilitating collaboration. We manage the funding process. We also manage the compliance and accountability to safeguard those state funds on behalf of OHCS. We offer technical assistance. We manage the database and the evaluation and reporting that comes out of the initiative to show the impact of the work. So actually, I got ahead of myself on the slides. Does anybody have questions about the initiative structure? Again, this is just kind of, in summary, the high level, who makes up the IDA initiative? Any questions coming in yet from that? If so, maybe just put them in the chat and I'll try and fold them in. Because I'm going to go on to what dictates the rules of the IDA. So we have layers. First is statute. So statute, if you don't know, means state law. Legislature decides, statute passes it, it becomes state law. IDAs are state law. So there are rules within state law or statute that we have to follow. Next is administrative rule, which is kind of like your clarification from the department, OHCS, that's responsible for the program, about the statute. After that is standard operating procedures, which NP, along with initiative FOs, kind of sets clarifications on how to do particular things or different situations that come up. We try and answer those questions kind of within the umbrella of the statute and the rule. And then each FO may have their own program policies that look a little different or a little more focused than the broadest picture of statute for the IDAs. So that's kind of your tier of what sets the rules for IDAs. They could fall in any one of these four and be reasons that you do or don't do things within your IDA program. So a little bit about the history of IDAs. In 1999, it was first became law or a program, along with a federal program called AFI, Assets for Independence, which was another funding source that really set the program up nationwide, and then Oregon copied it. So the statement from statute from the origins is that family economic well-being does not come solely from income, spending, or consumption, but instead requires savings, investment, and the accumulation of assets. That's kind of like the mission statement, I guess, of statute. And that is, in some ways, I think, borrowed or copied from AFI. So the origins are a very specific goal of job training, higher education, first-time home buyer, and small business growth or establishment. There were very rigid rules about what you could and couldn't do with your savings or the match money. And those were largely sort of mirrored between AFI and the Oregon legislature. 20 years later, where we're at now, the difference between rich and poor has grown. It's only deepened. The imbalance has deep systemic and structural roots. This divide plays out differentially for Oregon's BIPOC residents who experience an additional wealth gap in relation to white Oregonians. So this chart on the slide shows the wealth gap by race. Black Americans on the left side, Hispanic on the right. We know from history and data that communities of color have been and continue to be underserved, exploited, oppressed, excluded from wealth building opportunities. So by one recent measure, median wealth of white families is 171,000 compared with 17,000 for Black and 21,000 for Hispanic. A study from the early 2000s put Native household wealth at 8 cents on the dollar compared to white households. So there's growing recognition that a focus on race equity is a key element on the path toward prosperity to all, especially when we're talking about wealth accumulation. While we don't have enough time to explore the racial wealth gap here, we want to bring forward a frame from a really recent report by the Coalition of Communities of Color that you could find if you just search it online. The three key frames, which I think are really helpful in understanding wealth building, is the element of wealth stripping. So the structures in the legal and penal systems, policy, banking, and culture that continue to strip hard-won wealth from communities. Then there's economic stability, which is the critical piece of making wealth building possible to build on top of. And then there's your more straight wealth building, which are tools like home ownership, owning or growing a business, investing in the stock market, all ways that historically have just straight up built wealth. So for IDAs, we see them as an investment in cash to support economic stability and wealth building for lower income households, and coming through community-based service delivery with knowledge sharing as a key component. So because there persists a significant wealth gap in Oregon, the initiative has set a specific goal around reaching communities of color at 1.5 times their population representation. So how this works is we have developed a regional map that, as best we can, sort of aligns the demographics of the population of low and moderate income Oregonians with regions. So then each FO can look to measure their savers and the demographics of their client pool to the general population of their area and assess whether they are reaching people of color at the same or higher rates, so that we as an initiative can work towards that 1.5 times representation. Why we do 1.5 times is because if we want to make an impact in that gap, we have to do more than parity. So it can't just be at the same rates. So 1.5 times is our goal, and we look at that statewide. And that's how ultimately we think that we impact the racial wealth gap in Oregon. Okay, that was my next section and my prompt to stop and ask if there are any questions that have come up from any of the things I've shared thus far. All right, I shall continue, and you can put your questions in the chat if they come to you. So I want to kind of think about now the role of IDAs in building economic stability and wealth, kind of what we saw earlier. You have sort of these layers: wealth stripping, economic stability, and wealth building. So I'm going to look at how IDAs kind of play the economic stability and wealth building piece here. So while it's no longer true today, it's helpful to know that in the past, if a saver withdrew their savings, we're talking specific to IDAs now, a saver in the program withdrew their savings for an emergency that didn't fit the statutory definition of an emergency, which was pretty narrow, they could be exited from the IDA just for that. And that was about 1 in 5 savers historically didn't complete the IDA with any money, and most often cited was a financial emergency. So in 2020, soon after COVID hit, we successfully advocated as an initiative in a special session to add emergency savings as a match asset goal to the IDA statute. So what that did was really significant in how the program works today. The statute language enacted a shift, not just by allowing participants to take their savings to meet an emergency and not be penalized for it or exited from the program, but also actually allow match to go towards somebody's financial emergency and support them to still stay in the program to meet that end goal. Also, by broadly defining emergency expense in statute, we're allowing savers to identify for themselves what that emergency is in their own economic lives. For your reference, there is a policy on emergency savings, which sets some limits and some parameters, but savers can now use matching funds to meet financial emergencies and then be able to continue in the program rather than be exited for being poor and not being able to afford an emergency. So we're really trying to reorient our program away from a narrow definition about what is an emergency, who qualifies to succeed, to a path that looks at how do we support savers to meet their needs with the IDA program. So we have a bunch of asset goals in statute. Likely your organization doesn't offer all these asset goals, but this is kind of from the statute level, what we can do with the IDA. So across the initiative, in a foundational level, we can offer emergency savings, assistive technology, vehicle, and rental. We think about kind of a bridging from stability to wealth building are, again, emergency savings, debt repayment, education, micro enterprise, and home repair and manufactured home replacement. And then similarly, a couple of these obviously overlap, but also home purchase and retirement as more strictly wealth building assets. So across the IDA, we have people in Oregon offering different asset goals, kind of that span that divide of wealth building and financial stability. All right, I'm at another pausing point. Any questions? All right, what I'm going to talk about next is our website, what you might find on our website that could be helpful to you or potential savers or current savers. So we do have a search tool, which your organization will show up on if you go to IDAinitiative.org, OregonIDAinitiative.org, and click on Find an IDA Provider. You can search by location, languages that staff speak, savings goals, and then it populates on a map. We also have frequently asked questions that could be helpful for savers, or if you want to put questions on your website, if you get a lot of the same question, we try and answer it, some basic IDA questions in pretty plain language on our website. We also have this in Spanish. If you have somebody asking about whether they qualify for an IDA, we do have an income eligibility tool that gets updated with the IDA's income limits by county. They can go and do some research on their own to find out whether, if they pre-screen themselves to see if they qualify. That's a tool that might be useful for you all. And then we also have a toolbox for FOs. This is staff that are regularly working in the IDA can go here to find a lot of our resources or documents, includes the most current income calculator, the standard operating procedures, the data dictionary, recordings of past meetings and trainings, and a lot more. So that the website, we're kind of constantly trying to make it adapt to what it is that potential savers need. I didn't mention this, but there are tax questions. You'll see over here, IDA tax related issues. If somebody has a question about taxes in their IDA, we put that information up on this website. And yeah, that's my summary of the IDA website. Any questions about the website? Thank you, Cade, putting the link in there. You can wander around it.
I have a question, Luke.
Yeah, Cecilia, go for it.
It's not a question, but can you just let people know how they get into the IDA initiative, Oregon IDA initiative? Don't they need a password, or is that just me?
To the toolbox, yeah, there is a password. Email me if you need to get into the toolbox and you need the password. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but yes, thank you. It is password protected so that people don't accidentally wander into it. Any other questions? If not, it's Derek is up next to talk a little bit about our database.
All right, I guess I'm taking over. You're controlling the slides? Okay, yeah, stay on there, please. First, shout out to Cade. He has the best background in the world. I keep staring at it. And shout out to someone here who helped me, was part of our team that helped me and my wife buy a home, and they're here. I will not point them out, but I'm like excited that they're here. Okay, anyway, here we go. Outcome Tracker is the database that we use to track the IDA program. Like many programs, right? We use data in evaluating the program. We use the database to track funds and the grant funding and then the match earned. So each FO has what we call an instance of the database Outcome Tracker, but neighborhood partnerships / the Oregon IDA initiative have access to some of that data. I say some because some FOs use Outcome Tracker for their whole program. So in that case, when they're using it for HUD, for example, neighborhood partnerships does not have access to that data. Yeah, so we collect a ton of data. Again, it's as Luke was talking about, we have these equity benchmarks. That's how we kind of evaluate those. It helps us understand who we serve and where we're serving them, and where we're not, and who we're not serving. Let's see here. Most of you, I would imagine, are familiar with Outcome Tracker. Some of you interface with it more than others. So I'm just going to talk about this slide that we have up. And so let's see here. Yeah, so Outcome Tracker, right? We do the intake, which is the eligibility. This is how we determine, or one of the ways we determine if a client is eligible for the IDA. Once they're in the IDA, you usually give them this, what we're calling a new tab called Client Info, which is the demographics data. And the theory is, or what we're hoping is that folks separate the eligibility from the demographics. So once they're in the program, that is when you ask for demographics. Furthermore, as part of our evaluation, we ask for this financial capability scale at intake and exit. So usually some folks do it differently, but you take the client info and the FCS, as we call it, financial capability scale, at the same time. And then when they're in the program, they're doing the saving, right? You track that in the IDA accounts tab. You're literally, the savings and the match. And then whatever withdrawals they're doing, you're tracking it in the IDA accounts tab. And then when they're done, obviously they do an exit. And then you also do the second financial capability scale. I'm gonna pause there to see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I think the only thing I have left on my list is do we have a slide for the client portal, Luke, or no? No, okay. So there is this component of Outcome Tracker called the client portal. This allows clients, IDA clients, to log in to Outcome Tracker. So it's a public facing portion of it where they can see their balance, their IDA balance, and also whatever information that the FO has chosen to give them, whether that's forms like a withdrawal request form. So a lot of FOs, you can log into their client portal and then download or fill out that form. And then, again, folks do it differently. I think we're also mentioning this because I think our goal for this year is to adopt the client portal on a more broader level, more wider level, because I think, we want our clients to have access to the info that they they need, which is usually how much match they have. Anything else, Luke?
And if you have questions about our database or the data that we collect,
Sweet. Thank you, everybody.
oh, I guess I did have one more slide. I can talk about this. So the demographic info for clients, we did expand this year. So if you help savers enroll, they might wonder why we ask so many questions. And we do that to better reflect our value for inclusion and diversity. So we no longer have like the 5 race categories and you have to just select one. We have like 30 or something. It's like a much more broad and inclusive process for understanding who we're serving and reaching. And because of that, or in order to better identify racial disparities in IDEA reach and outcomes is one reason why we wanted to create a more robust collection of especially client info about race and ethnicity. We also want to understand where more resources are needed. And we have more accessibility questions as far as functional limitations to better understand what our accessibility needs and how we can respond to those. So if you work with savers, you may be noticing that the questions have shifted for the IDA, and we hope that it brings us to a place where we are able to better respond and understand. So my kind of final, are there any other questions about our data collection before I go on? All right, my final section is really just going to talk about the saver journey. So you may be familiar with parts of these if you work with savers, but I want to give you kind of a start to finish picture of what the saver journey looks like for an IDA saver. So typically we do a 5-to-1 match now, which before most commonly was a 3-to-1, which I'll just explain match rates. The IDA program is a participant saves their amount, the program matches it. It used to be 3-to-1, now it's 5-to-1 most commonly. We cannot exceed 5-to-1 as an initiative. That's part of the statute rule. But here's an example, sort of a Monopoly looking game board for, as somebody goes, if they have 600 in savings and a 5-to-1 match, they would get 3,000 in match for 3,600 total. If they have 1,200 in savings and 6,000 in match, they would get $7,200 total, and 1,800 in savings would get them 9,000 in match. You multiply the number they have saved by 5 that's the formula when you do the calculation. So to be an eligible applicant, the rules of the program are an Oregon resident or live in Oregon. You don't have to have a social security number, but you have to live in Oregon, have an address in Oregon. You have to be at least 12 years old at application. Your income for the household has to be below the levels that are set in statute, which are either a median or a federal poverty level. And we determine by county where the highest level is, at each county level. So we have a complicated chart that shows you by county and household size what the income limit is. And then lastly, you have to have net worth below $20,000. Net worth is the value of what you own or your assets minus what you owe or your debts. And for IDA purposes, you are excluding the value and debt of a home, one vehicle, so one home, one vehicle, and up to $120,000 in retirement savings, so that we're not penalizing people for having saved for their retirement. So as an FO, a primary job is to identify whether they qualify under those different metrics. when they apply or when they're entered into the program, they do all that paperwork to understand the client info, and then they set up a savings plan agreement and they open an account at a bank. Sometimes those are custodial accounts where the fiduciary organization has control over the account. Other times they are not custodial. The saver has access to their funds. So they open that account and they save in that account towards their goal. Very commonly, $9,000 in match is what people have gotten in the past. We can actually, if funding was not an issue, people would probably more commonly go up to $12,000 or $18,000. You can go up to $20,000 in match with the IDA initiative rules. Again, it's a balance of funding and how much you have versus how many clients you serve. But some of the rules within that are that within a 1 year period, you cannot get more than $6,000 in match. So I bring this visual here because we really have tried to think about how to explain this in an easy way. So this $6,000 in match is the most somebody could get before that 1 year mark in the program. After that, they could do another $6,000 in match, up to $12,000 if that's something your organization is going as high as 12, or if you're going up to $18,000, you would have to be in the program for 2 years and into that third year to get $18,000. So $6,000 per year from application. And really the reason for that is that this program is built on a concept of saving regularly over time. So the more you need to save, the longer you're required to stay in the program. So the question comes up, how much does somebody have to save every month per the rules of the program? And the answer is zero. They don't have to save anything every month. The IDA does have a requirement that they demonstrate progress towards their goal, but we are backing away from a very strict understanding of good savings means somebody makes a savings deposit every month for the same amount, because we realize that that's really bringing a lot of assumptions about somebody having regular income, somebody's expenses being really fixed. And we want to say, the point is, what's your goal? How are you getting there? So lump sum deposits are okay. Some deposits at higher levels, some months, and lower levels, other months are okay. And again, this is the IDA statute does not bind us to a particular requirement to make monthly savings a requirement. So they make progress towards their goal. Early on, hopefully they can take financial education, because one of the opportunities within the IDA is to receive match now for emergency savings. But to be eligible for that, they have had to be in the program at least 3 months so that they have started their process of saving. They have had to take financial education because that's a requirement before any matched withdrawal. And they have to still live in Oregon, so they can't have moved out of state. But after that point, we want our program to be coming in a supportive way towards savers if they have financial emergencies, to, as best we can, meet them and allow them to stay in the program and hopefully complete successfully down the road. We do have some financial education options that are available to any saver. One is through Dev Northwest, which is a live online class in English and Spanish, and there's a youth one also. Another is through Save First Financial, which offers an online self-paced in English, and there's a basic one in Spanish and Russian. Or each FO may offer their own financial education, and NP also convenes IDA providers to do some professional development around financial education and the standards that we have as an initiative. The next piece, and again, I'll take any questions if people have it as I go, but after financial education, we kind of imagine asset-specific education coming in, which is, again, another requirement that savers receive specific education related to their goal. So if they are a micro enterprise provider, that they would have some support in what it takes to build or grow a business. Same with home purchase, same with education. That is largely left up to each fiduciary organization or IDA provider to identify, and oftentimes comes with elements of coaching or counseling along with that saver journey through the process. I'm going to pause a second if anybody has any questions. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'm about at the end and the rest will be open for questions. But does anybody have questions about some of those early pieces of the client journey?
You see Jeff's question on the chat?
Oh, no, sorry. Application or account open date. It is from the account open date. Yes, thank you for that clarification. So somebody might apply. It often takes a couple weeks or more to enroll them, to approve them, get all their paperwork. Then they go open their bank account. The date that they open their bank account is their open date, and that's when the clock starts for that 12 months. All right, so last thing is really when they complete, some programs do one matched withdrawal for the whole amount, and that is particularly supportive of certain asset goals, but other ones, people make matched withdrawals as they go. But completion really means that they've reached their savings goal. They are able to purchase the asset that they are set out to do. Sometimes people change assets for FOs that offer multiple assets. There is flexibility to change. Sometimes people just leave with emergency savings. Maybe a home purchase was out of reach. Common options for home purchase now are the Oregon First Time Homebuyer Savings Account. Their match can go into that, or emergency savings for $3,000 in match is our limit for emergency savings if you're exiting the program and not pursuing your asset to the end. And there's also some other alternatives for education savers. Using the 529 college savings plan is a way that people can also complete and have that money to carry forward. And then you do kind of the wrap up paperwork with clients. NP then evaluates, sends out a survey when they complete. We send out another survey a year later to ask about how has it been maintaining their asset, or what they've gained from the program looking down the road a year. And that's kind of the end of the road. They've reached their goal. They can come back and apply for another IDA. At your organization, you may not offer people the chance to get a second IDA, but they could go somewhere else. There are no rules as far as people returning or getting two IDAs. They just can't have two IDAs at the same time. So that's the end of the saver journey, and that's the end of our orientation. So I'll open it up for other questions. Appreciate everybody that came. I really want to know, we haven't done this before on a group level. We've done it on an individual level, certain versions of this, but really want to know from you all what questions you still have, what feedback you have after the session. So I invite that. I'm going to put up Derek, Randy, and Mai's email addresses here so that you can follow up with us if you have other questions or feedback. But does anybody have questions for the last little bit of time that we have saved for this session today? If you didn't put your name and organization in the chat, please do so that we know who is here. That's super helpful to know. And if you don't have questions, maybe put in the chat what's something you learned today that maybe surprised you about the IDA, or unmute and ask your question. Those are all valid ways to spend the last 7 minutes that we have together. All right, does anybody want to unmute and say what's something you learned that was new or surprising to you about the IDA?
I honestly wasn't aware of the how expansive the program was, how inclusive it was. That I know probably started as get people into houses, small savings and things like that, but expanding into the point where we can help pay for people's education and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely a little bit of new information to me.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, option for retirement, that is not very commonly used right now, but we want to figure out how to support people more in how to support FOs in taking that on as an asset goal. Sometimes it's currently used as an alternative. If somebody can't complete with their asset, maybe you can finish them in a retirement IDA, which really builds that investment wealth that we talked about. Gets them on a hopefully a trajectory for saving for retirement.
I have a question, Luke.
Yes,
Derek.
please.
I know that as NAIA, there's a lot of NAIA peeps on here. This year I put in my work plan that we want to utilize the portal, start utilizing the portal for savers. What is the best way to do the training on that? I guess that would probably be a Derek question.
Yeah, so I guess you're asking how it's the best way to get you all to start using it and training you on how to use it. Oh, yeah, I think conversation is always a good start. I think the thing that I tell folks is like, how does it fit into your workflow? So do you invite folks? So some folks, they'll have them apply to the IDA through the portal. So some folks do that. That's not necessary. You could be like, they've filled out the application, are in the program, somebody's talked to them, and maybe somebody says, we're going to invite you to this client portal where you can see your balance. And so they're warned, and then you just you will email them the login or asking them to log in. So it's yeah. So I guess what I would say is talk to me, but also think about where does it fit in your workflow and where the client goes.
All right.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I think we wrap up then, and appreciate you all taking your time this afternoon to be with us here, and reach out if you have other questions. Again, if you have feedback, something that you wished was covered, we'd love to hear it, because I think anticipate keeping on with offering these so that we can do a better job of getting this out there to staff at different organizations that offer IDAs to be more transparent about how this works and the history. And I'm glad that you all joined us today to learn more about the IDA.
Thank you.